hook right there. We have the trip being over here, being 500 hectometers and 5,000 kilometers. So obviously they should light bulb should go up in their head. One more thing I want to show you. Let me just find it here. This comes into the place value and the use of the base 10 system.
To meters. That's 1, 2, 3 powers of 10 array. This power of 10 tells us how many places to move the decimal when going from millimeters to meters. Now remember, when you don't see a decimal in a number, it's understood.
That's another strategy they could use with moving the decimal, and I just want to show you really quick what I wrote on the board here. A popular acronym that teachers like to use. You might have heard it. I remember when I was a kid I used this. King Henry doesn't mind drinking chocolate milk. That's something we would like them to actually write down on their notebook, or just, you know, the main units right here. They could help them for the visual learners while they're doing our activity that we'll get into in a little bit. They could physically, you know, if they have, I don't know, something like he put up there, like 125, what was that? They could actually physically, you know, do the swoops like he did on the video and convert like that. So that's another little strategy that we would like to do, and another little thing that we'd like to please all the different styles of learning. And with that, Annette will get us into some tips and our activity.
Okay, now I know how Vanna White feels. Okay. Well, by the 5th grade, most students will have learned all the attributes of an object that's to be measured. They will have developed their own estimations, their own benchmarks of units and how they relate to these attributes. And they will have already been introduced to the standard and non-standard measurements. They will be introduced to the customary as well as the standard. Now the customary, we have to be very careful, because customary just depends on where you live. For someone in France, the metric system is their customary. But for us, it's the Old English standard. And we're going to talk about the metric system today. The first thing that we should do when we're teaching students the metric system is not to go directly to the units. We should have them develop, as I said, their benchmarks. They should have posters of what maybe the size of a paperclip is. If a paperclip is equal to 1 centimeter, a kilometer may be equal to the size of 9 football fields. They should have this concept as their base, and then we can teach the values of the units. We can teach the units alongside, but not put so much emphasis on the units as much as emphasis on the concept of what a meter is, what a kilometer is, what a millimeter is. And then we can develop. By the 5th grade, they will have already been introduced to the metric system. They will have already been introduced to all the prefixes that go with the metric system. And in the 5th grade, now they're being asked to do conversions. They're being asked to identify equivalent units. And this is how we're going to help them in the 5th grade. First of all, if you look in your packets under about the second to last page, I have 7 tips for teaching the metric system. And I'll just touch on a couple of them. We're not going to do all 7. One thing that the students should understand, and we as educators should also understand, that this system is based on units of 10. It's much simpler than our customary system. So, you know, there's so many benefits to it. And, you know, as a matter of fact, if you want to do business with the government, you have to know the metric system. And if you want to do business internationally, you must know the metric system, and you must know how to do conversions. Even though I think our book says, you know, conversions, not such a big deal, but according to the New York State standards, it's a requirement. There are some prefixes that we can just keep in mind. The kilo, the kilometer, it could be the kilogram, it could be, as I said, the kilometer. It means 1,000. Hecto, 100. Every prefix has a value. And if you keep that in mind, changing from one unit to another should be simple, and understanding the equivalence should be very easy. We should help students to understand the relationship among units. Have students practice trading units. We can create an activity where if we give some of the students a strip, say, that has value of 1 meter, and we want them to trade with someone else that has maybe 2 strips with who have two 50-centimeter strips, they should understand that 1 meter is 100 centimeters or 2 50-centimeter values. That's what, the equivalent values are. And also, to do the metric system, students should have a good grasp of the decimal system. That should have been addressed, several grades before. But in case they have a problem with this, there are several tools that you can use. There are base 10 blocks that they can use for the smaller units or even the larger units. And there are decimal grids that will help them. And have students create their own metric measures. First, before even getting into what the unit is, have them create their own tape measures, their own rulers, just to get that foundation. Once that is solid, then we can build. Now, and also one really good tip, if there are students from other countries in your class that use a metric system, take advantage. Have them help out. Have them be peer tutors. Have them explain what it was like for them to learn the metric system, how they learned it, what strategies did they use, what do they use to convert, from one unit to the other. And now we'll get into our activity.
I already gave them the Post-its.
Okay.
The Post-its represent if you have a 1 or a 2, it means you're in group 1. If you have a 2, you're in group 2. Whatever's easiest for you guys, I'll just be that guy. How about group 1 over here, group 2 over there?
Okay.
Split it right down the middle.
This activity, in this activity, you will be finding the conversions, the equivalents of these numbers. And the back page is a metric table to help you out.
And keep in mind, you're going to be using this up here. The students would have this from the video, and we encourage them to work from this. Especially if they're weak in decimals, they can physically see how you move the decimal. Additionally, we would have the availability of, like Annette said, some base 10 blocks for kids who need a little kinesthetic feel to the lesson.
Okay, with this activity, you are to find the equivalents. And once you have found the equivalents, you are to decide which is the longer unit, the longer measure, the shorter measure. And from the shorter measure to the longer measure, you're going to place them on the whiteboards. Group 2, you place your order over here from shorter to longer, from left to right. And group 1, you do the same thing. Shorter to longer is left to right. Go for it.
Yeah.
Or shortest to longest, I should say. And you can speak among yourselves in the entire group. It's just help everyone so that there's understanding, show strategy. It's all about learning. It's not a quiz. We're all learning.
Because this is the both one side. I think so. Smart.